from the Wiley Vision studio in Spokane, Washington. The Stephen James Wiley Show. Hi, diddly ho, welcome to the show. It's me, Steve. How are you? I'm good. Thanks for asking. I am excited. Today we have part 2 of my conversation with Ben Delaney, discussing his wonderful adventure in India. Today, it's this afternoon where I am. It's a Wednesday afternoon, to be precise. And I play tennis often on Wednesday mornings with my dad and our wonderful friends. And it's usually just a tremendous time. But I often will do, what would you call them? Mental experiments. You know, I've talked about this, The Inner Game of Tennis. It's a good book. You should read it. But also just studying the ebb and flow of all of it, right? And today, so I'll use mantras or repetitive. What is a mantra? Let's look at that. A word or sound repeated to aid concentration in meditation. There's also, it's a Sanskrit word coming from man, which means to think. I'm not sure. That's above my pay grade there, but somebody can tell. Sanskrit is something with India and the East and things I don't totally understand, other than I'm trying to, because I'm reading a lot of crap about that stuff, and I love it. So one of the things I do, because I'm a spiritual cat, is I will recite, for weeks now, when playing tennis, I will recite the fruit of the Spirit. If you don't know what the fruit of the Spirit is, you clearly haven't read the Bible, have you? No, that's all right. You don't have to. I'll tell you. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The last one being kind of a big one when you're playing tennis and you miss a shot and you're like, mother, you know. And I swear a lot sometimes, and I don't really feel bad about it. I don't. And you probably do too, and you don't feel bad about it. And you know what? It is what it is. But you do notice that when you let it fly, some kind of energy comes out of you that it's like you fully have acknowledged and empowered this negative experience that made you say, you know, fuck or shit. The horrible words that we're not supposed to say, right? And it's like it lets something out of the bag when you do that, right? So I've been trying not to do that because I feel like my tennis game starts to go downhill when I start swearing, and I'm not on the court like yelling at people, right? Or yelling, mother, you know, I do it under my breath. You know, everybody, you try to hide it. We're good sports. It's all about having fun, really. But you get competitive. You get pissed. And and then you hit a horrible shot. You don't even know why you did it. Your racket, you didn't, you know, it's just so embarrassing, right? I had one today. The ball was hit. It was like a knuckleball, like 10 miles an hour, just not moving fast. And I hit it with my racket, and it was like I was mentally handicapped. The racket flobbled in my hand. The ball hit the ground. It was embarrassing. But you just got to move on. And so for weeks, I've been doing the fruit of the Spirit. I just love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. I forget a lot of them. The kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, they all kind of sound, there's a lot of nesses. I think they're the nesses. I just mess them up. So I'm just, you know, the first 4 are easy to remember. And then I kind of remember the others, and then self-control. And that's the biggie on the tennis court. And patience is the other one I've noticed that comes in handy on the old tennis court. You patiently wait for the ball. You patiently swing through the ball. And it works to a degree. But then it doesn't work. And I'll be sitting there saying this thing, love, joy, peace, patience, just on to where it's like a subconscious track running in my brain, right? I'm not even consciously forcing the words in my mind. It's just a repeated thing going on. And then it still is, it's not like it guarantees success, but it does to a degree keep me in the line of a vibe I'm trying to ride, right? And so I do that, but even then I've sucked, and I've thought, man, this is, and I'm always trying to figure this out. So today, and I've had some pretty sweet meditation times in the last week, some not so good, but a couple real humdingers. It's all sacred stuff, none of your business. But I'll tell you, one of the themes that came out of one was just pure, unadulterated joy and laughter. And today, I decided to just say joy and laughter over and over in my mind. And I'm talking and I'm having fun and I'm playing and I'm interacting with my friends there on the tennis court. But in my mind, it's a track, joy and laughter. Sometimes throw love in there. Love, joy and laughter, joy and laughter. And I can tell you with full integrity, today, I did not drop one F-bomb. I didn't lose my shit at all. I was so happy. And I had a few horrible shots, like I told you. But by and large, I played beautifully. I hustled. I got to balls that I shouldn't have got to. I was a phenom. I was elegantly putting on a show, if I might say so. Not a show that television would be interested in, because I'm not a great tennis player, but my friends I was playing with were thoroughly impressed with my play, and that's all that matters. And we're not great tennis players, but in that little bubble of fun, my God, we had fun. And I played well, and it was a wonderful thought experiment. You could almost say spiritual. I played tennis in a meditative state. You could literally say that. Was I interacting? Would anybody else in that court know? No, they did not. But I knew it, and I rode that wave, baby, and I never got mad once today. Now, does that guarantee it's going to happen next time I play? No. Sadly, I want to say that that I have found the secret key. But I don't know that I'm going to keep trying. We'll see. I'll report back. If I remember, I will report back. Sorry if you can hear this ice. I have a Starbucks iced vanilla sweet cream cold brew. And I tell you what, it makes my heart happy. So there you go. That's what I did today. And I wanted to share that because I thought it's friggin' awesome. And I loved it. And it was fun. And you should try something like it. You don't have to be playing tennis. You know, go hang out with people you don't like and tell yourself you're having a good time. I don't know. Alrighty, we're going to take a break and come back with my friend Ben Delaney in the dramatic conclusion of his experience in India and our wonderful conversation we had. And then I left him a voicemail. We'll see if I can get him back on the show later this week or sometime in the near future to just see where he's at in life. I don't know that we want to catch up on how his butt's doing. We'll probably keep it less personal, but you know, there you go. Enjoy the dramatic conclusion of the conversation with Ben Delaney. Back after this.
A American Septic, proudly serving Phoenix, Arizona and surrounding areas since 1953. At A American, we can pump, clean and repair your current septic system with ease. Or we can design and install a brand new state-of-the-art system. No matter the problem, our crackerjack crew of expert technicians have got you covered. Every Jack, Jill, and Diane gets a thrill when they hear the A American pump truck coming up the road. A American Septic. Find us on the World Wide Web at americanseptic.com. That's americanseptic.com.
And now, today's featured guest.
You told me a story. I wondered if you would share it again.
Yeah.
For everybody about you. There were obviously a lot of people begging in some places, and you came across a situation where you ended up spending some time with a gentleman who I think was a very poor person who was asking for money as well, but he kind of,
Yeah.
you guys connected in a not beggar to Westerner type way. You connected as people. Would you share that story?
Yeah, sure. This was towards the end of the trip. I was just scrolling through my pictures to pull up his picture. It was towards the end of the trip, and like I said, these kinds of lessons I had been kind of ruminating on, and I think I'd been learning them just through experience. That this could happen, that I could actually connect heart to heart, and I didn't need a ton of words. And I think I just started to kind of flow in that more. And this particular day, I was out walking, and I was just kind of enjoying myself. I ran into these. I'm looking at the pictures now. I ran into these young boys at a park, and they were all gawking at me, and that was kind of a common occurrence. They teenage boys would just love to sort of interrogate the Westerner in a friendly they'd come up and ask me a million questions and try and get me to say cuss words in Hindu and stuff like that. So and I obliged them happily. And then I kind of was on my way out of this park, and I walked by this really beautiful tree, and there was this kind of concrete bench at the base of the tree, and there was all this yellow and red string tied around it. And whenever you see that, it's basically like a little temple. Like they treat trees with a real kind of reverence and almost in certain cases kind of like deity level, whatever reverence. And so this tree was kind of a temple tree. It's a particular tree called the peepal tree. It's really amazing. It's a kind of sacred tree in a lot of the world. But anyway, I was like, I'm going to sit under the peepal tree. Not people like human beings. Peepal, I think.
Okay.
And I just kind of was like, felt to sit there. I wanted to sit and just kind of be in that space. And sure enough, the one guy comes by and asks for money, and I just didn't feel like giving him any. I mean, you can't give money to everybody who asks for it, or else you're toast. You run out of money, and you just have to be judicious. You have to even the kind of some of my Indian mentors and friends there were like, be careful. You give money to people who you feel to give money to. Don't just give money to everybody. So I was kind of like the first guy that came by. I just didn't give him any money, and he went on. And then this other guy came by, and he had this look on his face. He looked like he was drunk, and he had this kind of like that kind of glassy eyed look, and I was like, I'm not probably not gonna give this guy money either, but oh well. And he asked me, and I just said, no, or maybe I honestly don't remember if I gave him money or not. I might have given him like a few coins or something, or maybe not. No, I did, because that's what prompted it. Yeah. So I gave him a couple coins. I just kind of, his look just kind of told me that he was in need, and I felt that feeling, that sort of like, okay, this guy could use help, and so I gave him whatever it was, something really tiny, and he just like bursts into tears, and he's weeping. Wow. And it wasn't, I mean, there are so many whatever, like grifters and hacks, and there's so many people trying to scam you all the time, everywhere over there. So at first I thought, is this just an elaborate, you know? And then, and of course, that thought happens up in the upstairs, up in the brain part, where it's like trying to analyze. Is this guy trying to get more money out of me by, engendering sympathy? Whatever. And then I kind of let it. I realized, and I let my consciousness kind of come down into more of my heart, and realized, wait a minute, no, he's weeping. I could feel it. It wasn't just an act. I felt it in my heart. Like I suddenly had that kind of misty-eyed feeling, right? When when someone is right with you and they start just weeping deeply. And so I started feeling that, and I kind of just welcomed him to come sit next to me, and I kind of just put my arm around him and like just listened. He just kind of cried for a minute, and then he starts talking he spoke pretty good English, starts telling me about, he's like, this is not who I am. This is not me. And I was like, what do you mean? And his son had just died like a few days before, and he was like grieving for his son, who was obviously must have been a grown up, because this guy must have been in his 60s or something. And he was grieving for his son, and I was just with him and listening, and then he's telling me this life story about how he came from a different country, and he's done all these things, and this guy stole his taxi at one point, and he's been on hard times ever since, and blah blah blah. And I kept, again, every few moments my head voice would jump in and be like, somebody stole his taxi. Okay, here comes the ask. When's he gonna ask for more money? And of course, he never did. He wasn't about money for him. He was actually connecting as a human being. And so then I'd come back to my heart and just feel this man is not lying to me. He is telling me the truth. This story is real. And at one point there's a kind of tradition in India with chai. Everybody kind of knows about the chai there. It's famous. It's kind of this, it's everywhere, right? On every street corner, there's like a chai guy. And so it's but it can also be this kind of, there is a kind of cultural aspect to it, where it can be a kind of connection point, or a kind of mechanism for two people to kind of connect. Like, for example, when I first met my doctor, after we kind of went through a bunch of things and did some procedures, one of the first things he did was like, he could tell I was nervous and whatever, and he took me across the street and we had chai together, and it was like this kind of
cool
moment of, anyway. So this guy who I'm talking with under the tree, he's bawling and he's weeping, and finally he goes, I want to buy you chai. I want to bring you chai. So he takes off. He just kind of turns around, and he goes off, and he goes around the corner, and I'm like, let me pay for it. Here, I started to hand him more money. He goes, no. He holds up his hands, and he wouldn't let me pay for it. He goes, and he's kind of goes out of the park to get, and then he comes back a couple minutes later with these 2 little cups of chai, and he had taken the money that I gave him, when he was asking for money, and he'd taken that money, and he went and he bought chai so that we could both sit there together and drink the chai and kind of. And honestly, Steve, even as I tell it now, I'm like, what was the point of this story? And then I realized there wasn't really a point, other than it was just an amazing human connection where all I did was just sit there. I knew that I was supposed to also. It wasn't like some, I don't know. It was just a knowing. I needed to go just sit and be there. And I did. And then this guy came along. And then somehow, by me just being there, literally, and just kind of listening and caring and looking at him and looking him in the eye and touching him and, putting my arm on his shoulder and stuff, something in him just broke open. And honestly, when he walked away, he was like, just so different. His whole countenance was like completely different. He was smiling.
Wow.
It was like he needed to connect with a human being, and he probably
Yes.
wasn't getting that anywhere. And he never asked for more money. It wasn't a scam. It wasn't, he wasn't drunk. You know what I mean? It's like all the Western,
Yeah.
all the kind of doubting and stuff that I had originally entertained just became stupid. It was like, no, this is just a human being. And, and
I love
anyway,
it.
that's that story. And the funny thing is, and the ironic thing, and the brain exploding thing about India is that there's a dozen other stories of people actually scamming me and just being ruthless and just being amazingly cunning. And you know what I mean? Like, it's all
Yeah.
there. It's all out there. That's one of the kind of mysterious and amazing things about, well, I don't know, the world in general, but particularly that place is there's just everything. And it because of that, again, it just forces you to kind of learn to listen from your heart. And I wish we had, this is kind of an aside again, going off that whole heart idea, but I wish we had a better vernacular in our Western culture for it. I mean, there are people talk about chakras, right? That's one kind of way of describing an energy center. People talk about energy centers. They don't call them chakras, they call them energy centers. Same difference. There's various traditions throughout the world that talk about these parts of our body that literally relate to different parts of our consciousness. And we in the kind of Christian West, we just don't quite have a vocabulary that is adequate to work with those ideas, I think. I feel frustrated when I talk about it because I feel like there's so much meaning in it, and yet the very nature of kind of working from your heart space is almost anti-language. I mean, it's like it's the layer that lives under the language. So when you try and pin language on it, it's really difficult. But it's critical to operate there. And it actually is so fast. It's so efficient. You can deduce problems so quickly. You can determine whether someone is like basically harmful or not within milliseconds. And it doesn't require any thinking. It's literally feeling only. But it's just as accurate, in fact, more accurate a lot of the time, and really powerful. So
I think it's really cool. And it's the thing I love about that story is exactly what you just said about how you encountered your cynicism, which is rooted in redundant truth.
Yeah.
In the amount of times people tried, even just there, but even in the West here in the United States,
everywhere,
we are weary and concerned with being taken by somebody because it's a hard world and people are dishonest. And then you end up in that environment where you can't even speak the language, and you end up having to trust that gut, that thing that we have such a horrible lack of verbiage for. And even how you went from the original spot and then you got in your head and you went to Delhi and then you thought, no, I was right the first time. And what was that? Probably your gut knew you were supposed to be, and gut sounds so crass. Just follow your gut. But that's really what you did in all these situations. And I think it's so cool to highlight the beautiful moments you had because you were able to do that. So I want to talk about the medical side of this because that is why you were in India. And this is an 8-week procedure. So perhaps kind of give us a little insight into kind of the nuts and bolts of what you were there to do as far as how because you had a lot of downtime, if I'm correct. Yeah. And kind of let us know let's just go through that whole process and then we can get into the deeper themes of what took place for you while you were there.
Okay. So the initial So in terms of the actual treatment process, there was an initial ligation, they call it, where they kind of first go in and clean things out and put in the first round of the Shar Sutra, the string, the magical string. And that process was a whole story unto itself. But to put it in a nutshell, I wasn't initially expecting to be sedated or put under when they did this, because I was told that it wouldn't be necessary. But because I was a foreigner, because I was from America, they had to be just kind of extra careful, and they didn't want to, they were nervous because honestly, very few Westerners, ever come to this hospital. So they were kind of playing it extra safe. So they put me under, and I had, to be quite honest, like just an amazing kind of trip while I was under, and it was powerful and profound on many levels. But they did that. Then I recovered in the hospital room for the rest of the afternoon, and then I actually went home that night, and then so that began the process where I would every 5 days I would return to the hospital just for like a half an hour and have the string changed out. So I would go back. There would be usually 3 or 4 other guys that were waiting, and they were all patients of his, and we'd kind of sit in this little waiting room, and one by one we'd take turns, go in. He would basically take out the old string, put in a new one, tighten it, and that's the procedure. But it takes about 15-20 minutes, and to be frank, it's just excruciatingly painful. It's like maybe.
And they don't put you under for that?
No, they do a little bit of, they put a little like local, they put a little shot, a little local anesthetic, a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much that does, because I can't imagine it being any more painful than it was on certain days. Like if there wasn't an anesthetic there, I may have passed out. I mean, I don't know, because there were a couple days in particular where it was like, felt like more than I could handle. And that was probably those moments every 5 days were without question some of the most painful experiences I've ever had to just endure. That's the hard part. That unfortunately there was no way around that. That's why it's probably not approved by the FDA, right? I mean, it's like you're going to have these brief moments of extreme pain, and then they go away. Not go away entirely, but it was pretty pronounced. After about the 15-minute mark, it would subside. There was this initial just pain and burning and whatever, just pain. And then it would go down. It would go down to a manageable point where you could stand up and start walking slowly, and that was pretty intense. And it was kind of an interesting little brotherhood with a few of the guys that I'd show up with, because you'd kind of see their faces, and again, no words, but just, or very few words, but like, oh man, you're going in. I'm here for you. There was like these kind of special little moments and kind of a camaraderie there, and they were all, like genuinely surprised that I was even there. Like I was literally this doctor's first Western patient. He'd done thousands of these over the years, literally thousands. And I was,
that's cool.
So
man.
It was weird for everybody. Like I was kind of this, and in the hospital, I was just constantly being kind of gawked at. Like, who's the white dude? What's up with this guy? Why is he here? But, anyway, so every 5 days I would go, and then there'd be like that initial day of the treatment. It would be really painful, and I'd take like a very gingerly cab ride home. A couple times I would walk home. It was a few miles to the hospital, and there were certain days where it wasn't so bad, and I'd walk, but then I'd usually spend about a day and a half kind of just not doing a whole lot. I mean, I'd do stuff, but it was pretty careful. I wasn't just like, out there spending my whole day running around town kind of a thing, because I was a little bit just slowed down. It was painful. But then usually by like day 3, day 4, day 5, I was usually feeling pretty good. It was like that initial first few days of what really were the cutting moments when the body's doing the cutting. Those were painful, but then it was, bearable. And I spent a ton of time just being there. I mean, that was another strange, and it's like I said before, it kind of sounds cliche, but it was like a once in a lifetime kind of experience where I just, every day was some new little discovery or some new adventure, or I would just kind of sometimes decide like, I want to get out of town. So I'd take a taxi and like just go find some old monument somewhere, or find something on a map and just be like, let's go there. And I'd go there. And one day I just started walking north. I'm like, I know if I had a map, obviously I knew I'd end up somewhere I could get back from. And I just started walking, and I walked for like 7 miles. And I mean, I'm going through all these crazy neighborhoods, and there's all these chances to interact with people, kids love foreigners anywhere probably, and maybe especially there. So I was just like a celebrity most of the time when I would enter some, I'd kind of like wander up on a group of kids playing cricket in a field or something, and they would all just stop and run over, and I'd be like, no, keep playing. You don't need, and they'd want to talk. And then, one day I was walking by this cricket match, and this kind of fly ball came my way. It was kind of a lot like baseball, and I was quite a ways back, and it was just so happened to be coming right for me, and so I just reached out and caught it. And you would have thought that like some superstar had just showed up, like everybody's just cheering and like, whoa, did you see him? He caught that. But I mean, there were just so many really, I don't know. It was just a festival of curiosity constantly for me. I love new things, and I absolutely love just discovering stuff. So it was that every day, all day, whenever I was out walking the streets. And on that particular day when I went walking, I ended up realizing that I was like a couple of blocks from my doctor's house. And so unbeknownst to me, I kind of like accidentally got really close to his house, and I dropped in on him and ended up spending the whole evening there hanging out with him and his family, and it was really special.
As you reflect back on all of it, and we're really getting shorter versions of everything. This was a 2-month journey. What were the deeper themes that you walk away with and you look back at and take with you going forward that came out of this experience? It was obviously a very profound experience on your journey, and it was a demarcation point in some ways. Of you don't have pain that you had for years, and you have other things that probably came from it. Would you want to share kind of what you concluded or what you were taking with you?
Really, I would say it was so much about, like I said before, about the heart, about trusting and following intuition. That was such a major theme. Another part of it that really I think I came away with was learning how to endure pain. I mean, it's kind of obvious, I guess, based on just the reality of what I did, but I had to just endure a lot of pain. And there is something really deep and really profound about pain. That, I mean, everyone who's ever really had pain knows this, that it takes you to a place that is often just deeper than the descriptions that we can come up for it are. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's really deep. You really have to find that kind of comfort deep inside. And for me, I learned to just embrace my breath. I would I'd have to take this, during these moments of extreme pain, I had to just really, really deepen my breath and go down deep into my belly and into my inner self and find that place. So pain, but then also the reward that comes and the sort of, honestly, the kind of magical alchemical mystery of pain. It is this thing that we don't want, right? We avoid it. We, in our culture, right, and everybody probably, we avoid pain. We don't want to be in pain. And yet sometimes pain is the way toward the healing. That's as simple as I can think of it, I guess. It's like I wouldn't have had that healing if it wouldn't have been for those moments of intense pain. And so those moments were necessary. They were part of the deal. And it's one thing to kind of embrace or allow for pain when it's random and when it's chaotic, like getting hit by a car, right? You might somebody breaks their arm, or there's some or some sudden thing. But it's another thing to kind of submit to a process that involves pain, knowing that the process is designed to create healing. That's just a different way of understanding pain that I hadn't really, I don't think, ever entirely understood before. I think I'd been kind of working up to it in some intuitive way by swimming in the cold river in the winter time, and I've had this kind of ritual for several years of kind of enduring pain, and there's a lot of health benefits and, again, reasons to embrace that pain momentarily in order to go to this other place. And, but that came alive in a whole new way for me on this trip. So that was a big lesson. And I think the other major one that comes to mind is just a deep love and connection with people. I mean, it might sound cliche or trite, but just being able to be in a space where I was unconnected to anything allowed me to kind of reconnect to who I really am in the world. And who that is somebody who connects with people and who really loves people and who people feel loved by. I mean, that truth alone is kind of profound when you just, kind of, when you have no other connection points, when the only thing around you that is familiar is your own self, and even that starts to feel unfamiliar, it takes you to this place where you kind of recognize what's true about you. And one of the things I really encountered again was just how kind I was and how loving I was. I mean, it might sound like I'm trying to make myself sound good or something, but it really surprised me. It really delighted me to realize that I could make connections with complete strangers on the other side of the world who barely speak my own language, but who genuinely felt something special when we connected. The people that I left, the husband and wife, I mean, I just hardly can't think about them without crying. Like, they're just genuinely part of my heart now, and I'm part of their heart. And that is real. Those experiences are really powerful. And I just think it's these kinds of trips and these kinds of experiences, they kind of induce stuff that is hard to induce when you are just living in the Western world grind, or in any grind, whatever the grind is for any of us, right? We're just doing our life, going through stuff. But sometimes you get these moments, and for me, it happened to be 2 months worth. Sometimes it's not that long. Sometimes it might just be like an afternoon where you can kind of tap into that deeper part of yourself. But man, it's really good to kind of go there, like to realize that we're capable of a lot of connection, and it's important for us. It's healing. That in and of itself is healing for us, connecting with people.
Yeah.
And allowing ourselves to be both sometimes the antidote and sometimes sometimes the instrument of pain. I mean, my doctor is this amazing man who puts people through this slightly traumatic experience all the time, and yet what they get is this incredible healing, and it's an awesome gift. So I felt like those were big lessons.
And that concludes my conversation with my friend Ben Delaney. I hope you enjoyed it. Still intriguing and wonderful after a few years now since we had that conversation. So I hope it was useful and enlightening to you. And we'll have him back in the present day, maybe from the heights of a tree or here in the studio, just to see where he's at with life. He's always a thoughtful cat. So anyhow, I hope you have the best day. Remember, rock your mantra, baby. Joy and laughter, over and over and over again. Or whatever you want it to be. I am a superstar. I am the coolest. I have the best nose. I don't. Whatever you want, right? All right. Love y'all. Peace.